Hello, you don't know me, but my name is Joseph Irasheta, and I've been a scientist since 1990. I am Mexican American, third generation in this country. I am from the Indigenous group known as the Purépecha from the state of Michoacan, Mexico, otherwise known as Tarascan. And I would like to share some thoughts with you and a reading from John Trudell. I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you all as I go through my thoughts, and I hope they're impactful to you. So some of you might recognize this picture, the late 19th century, early 20th century, with the advent of railroads, the steam engine, the gasoline engine, and the industrial complex of Anglo-speaking North America came with a decided effort by the wealthy to monopolize many, if not all, resources. If you take a look at this picture, the trusts that are standing behind Congress are the Steel Trust, the Copper Trust, the Oil Trust, the Iron Trust, Sugar Trust, Coal Trust, and many others, paper, lots of other resources. And during that time period of about 30 years, from 1890 to the advent of World War I and the Depression just right before World War II, it continued so drastically and severely that there were wealthy men supporting fascism in the same way we see it today. This book by Jonathan Katz is something that I'd recommend for you all to read, The Gangsters of Capitalism, and how one Marine general um, uncovered these unpatriotic and treasonous acts by these wealthy barons um, to undermine democracy. And we're in that same particular crossroads because a number of very powerful technologies, including genomics and omics technologies, machine learning and AI, the internet, and a whole host of other technologies that allow the world to be captured digitally, surveyed, studied, analyzed, and targeted for existing or new resources or hidden resources. The crux of my talk is that we are at a crossroads. We are at a reckoning as humans on this planet, and it's just beginning. Here you see a slide that's often shown when it's talking about the global South versus the global North. Poor countries are not underdeveloped, they are overexploited. And this has been the case since about 1439, when Europe began to exploit Africa, and then in 1492, when they did the same to the Americas. My particular discipline is American Indian or Amerindigenous data from the Americas. Not only are large parts of Central and South America cut off from the United States and Europe, and they have been for any number of reasons, climate, insects, um, dangerous animals, impenetrable jungle, all those sorts of things are now open because of technology. One such technology that has opened up the Americas is the science of omics or genetics. The Americas represent a unique evolutionary branch of the human family. We ran the farthest, the fastest away from Africa, and now make up a very homogeneous and adapted to place human family. And that particular history that we have has made us very desirable to science. We're not quite a quote unquote generic human population, and we're not quite a Mendelian family like those families with Tay-Sachs disease, or those families with hemophilia, or those families with brittle bone disease, and we're not like an island community like Hawaii or a Pacific island. We are somewhere in between, and that history, that evolutionary history, is very interesting and will yield a lot of valuable commercializable information for science and for private corporations. So since at least 1989, American Indian and Native people of North, Central, and South America have been of great interest to science and pharmaceutical companies, and that has just increased exponentially since 2003 with the mapping of the first human genome. Since then, lots of private companies like Ancestry, 23andMe, and others have capitalized on this unique evolutionary history. And even though some projects like the Human Genome Diversity Project or the National Geographic Genographic Project have been criticized soundly, not only by Native people, but by other scientists and ethicists, it continues today, and it remains one of the most profitable aspects of direct market genetic testing today. This slide shows that we represent the low-hanging fruit of genomics and omics and general rare data sets. So at the same time, while we are being told that this research is here to help us, we are also the victims of several forms of racism and predation on our communities. And right now in the Americas, since Canadian First Nations and American Indians are not participating in much of this research and not willing to share data with publicly funded projects or private corporations, they are extracting same or similar information from Central America and South American countries, where indigenous populations still exist at high percentages. I feel that the real target of a lot of this capitalistic extraction is Africa. But as we all know, Africa is the mother country of all humans, and therefore it is home to some of the oldest populations in the world. And because they're the oldest, their DNA is the most complex and complicated to decipher. Native Americans are on the other end of that spectrum, and we represent a possible Rosetta Stone for untangling the source code called DNA for everyone, including the rich treasure chest of African genomes. The thing I'm going to read to you today is demonstrative of my beginning assertion that today we are at the same dangerous point that we were in 1890 and 1910. And I'm going to read you a piece by John Trudell, who he himself was a activist, a poet, a musician, and also in a lot of ways a a person who was in isolation and outcast because of his strong and charismatic persuasive abilities towards a lot of different people to get them to act. And if you look back on John Trudell's history and story, much of which he wrote himself, he felt like he was targeted by COINTELPRO and a lot of other federal law enforcement agencies. So in this slide, he says, protect your spirit because you are in a place where spirits get eaten. So the passage I'm going to read is called We Are the Power. And in this passage, he says that the new warrior of these coming times are the warriors that use their minds to point out the problems and the solutions of the crossroads that we find ourselves in. So this is taken from an online source called History as a Weapon. The link is there at the bottom. And this was a speech given by John Trudell in the Black Hills of South Dakota in 1980. The prologue is given by the paper called The Indigenous Voice, Visions and Realities, edited by Roger Moody. So I'm going to read the prologue and then launch into the speech itself. The largest gathering in recent years of Indigenous peoples and their supporters took place in Pahasapa, that is the Black Hills in the Lakota language, of South Dakota during the baking hot summer of 1980. For those who attended, and participants came from far as afield as Nicaragua, the Pacific, Northern Europe, Canada, South America, and throughout the United States, it seems to signify an end to the compartmentalized, often divisive single-issue movement of the 1970s and the beginning of a new international alliance between disparate forces. Redneck ranchers rub shoulders with radical redskins, white-green movement activists with native practitioners of alternative technologies, militant left-wing political adherents with anarcho-pacifists. Called the Survival Gathering and organized by a unique coalition of whites and Native Americans called the Black Hills Alliance, in a brief 6 days, scores of workshops and plenary sessions were held covering virtually every aspect of land use, corporate control, political oppression, Indigenous self-determination, alternative health, energy, and education. At the opening session of the gathering, the American Indian Movement co-founder John Trudell, in a remarkable address, drew together various strands of the emergent people's movements of the last 20 years and put them firmly in the context of an earth-based liberation in which Indigenous communities have practiced against tremendous odds for hundreds of years. So this is the beginning of John Trudell's words. I'd like to thank you all for coming to this place, and I'd like to give thanks for being welcomed here myself. And I'd like to talk tonight in honor of all of us in the struggle who have lost our relations to the spirit world. I'd like to talk to you in the honor of the wind, one of the natural elements, This is a survival gathering, and one of the things I hope you will all learn while you're here is to appreciate the energy and power that the elements are, that of the sun, that of the rain, and the wind. I hope you go away from here understanding that this is power, the only real and true power. This is the only real true connection we will ever have to power, our relationship to Mother Earth. We must not become confused. We must not become confused and deceived by their illusions. There is no such thing as military power. There is only military terrorism. There's no such thing as economic power. There's only the economic within these illusions. So we will believe they hold power in their hands, but they do not. All they know how to do is act in a repressive and brutal way. The power, we are a natural part of the earth. We are an extension of the earth. We are not separate from it. We are part of it. The earth is our mother. The earth is a spirit, and we are an extension of that spirit. We are spirit. We are power. They want us to believe that we have to believe in them, that we have to assume these consumer identities and these political identities and these religious identities and these racial identities. They want us to separate from our power. They want to separate us from who we are. Genocide. Genocide is just an intellectual way of saying murder because we live in a so-called civilized, industrialized world. Because this world is allegedly civilized and allegedly has laws, they can't go out and call an act of murder murder anymore. They call it genocide to throw another illusion in our eyes. And they have limited our ability to see the necessity for our survival because they want us to believe that genocide just means physical extinction. We must consider the spiritual genocide that they are committing against us, the spiritual genocide that white people have been victimized for thousands of years, the spiritual genocide that told them not to respect the earth, the spiritual genocide that told them not to respect the life that is the earth, but to pay all their tribute through the churches to God in heaven, that heaven would take care of them in the afterlife. They tried to take and suppress our natural identity, our natural spiritual connection to the earth. We must move to the time when we truly understand our connection to real power, because these people who deal with illusions and imitations, these men who have attempted to improve upon nature, they want to keep us confused. They want to keep us confused with sexism and ageism, racism and class. They want to keep us in confusion so that we will continue to believe in one lie after another as they program them into our minds and into our society. There is no hope for the American political system. The ruling class, the exploitative 1% who control the world economics today, are not going to change under the existing political rules. They're going to lie to us and they're going to create the illusion of changes, and they're going to push one face after another in front of us, making promises. We have to understand that when our oppressor treats us this way and does these things to us, we allow him to do it so long as we accept his lies. As long as we make excuses for his lies, as long as we tolerate his brutality, then we allow him to mistreat us. We have been allowing it too long. That's genocide. When I go around America and I see the bulk of white people, they do not feel oppressed. They feel powerless. When I go amongst my own people, we do not feel powerless. We feel oppressed. We do not want to make a trade. We see the physical genocide they are attempting to inflict upon our lives, and we understand the psychological genocide they have already inflicted upon their own people, that this is a trade-off they want us to make for survival, that we become subservient to them, that we no longer understand our real connection to power, our real connection to the earth. Power. They cannot stop the wind. They cannot stop the rain. They cannot stop the earthquake and the volcano and the tornado. They can't stop power. We are a spiritual connection to the earth. As individuals, we have all the power, and collectively, we have the same power as an earthquake, the tornado, and the hurricanes. We have that potential. We have that connection to the earth. We must be willing in our lifetime to deal with reality, It's not a revolution we're after, it's liberation. We want to be free of a value system that's being imposed upon us. We do not want to participate in that value system. We do not want to change that value system. We want to remove it from our lives forever. Liberation, we want to be free, but in order for us to be free, we have to assume our responsibilities as power, as individuals, as spirit, as people. We're going to have to work at it. We're going to have to be committed to it. We must never underestimate our enemy. Our enemy is committed against us 24 hours of the day. They use 100% of their efforts to maintain their materialistic status quo. 100% of their effort goes into deceiving us and manipulating us against each other. We have to devote our lives. We have to make our commitment. We have to follow a way of life that means we are going to resist forever. In the 1980s, we have to start working more realistically with a resistance consciousness, a resistance, something we can pass on as strength to the coming generations, a resistance where organizational egos do not get in the way, a resistance where the infiltrators and the provocateurs and the liars and the betrayers and the traitors do not get in the way. We will not get our liberation if we do not seriously analyze the experiences of our own lifetimes. The other side, the enemy, has studied us. They understand what we were up to in the 1960s. They understand what we wanted in the early 70s. They have studied us. They create certain events and they manipulate economics and they manipulate circumstances because they want to smash us in the same way they did in the 60s. So they can come in and smash our movements. We must become of a resistance consciousness. We must say that we will not allow you to smash us, even if it means that we have to deal with that part of you that you planted in me. We will not allow you to smash us. This is part of our obligation to the earth. Only by fulfilling our obligation to the earth can we fulfill our obligation to the people. Only by understanding our connection to the earth can we create a fair system that's going to be good to all the people. We must go beyond arrogance of human rights. We must go beyond the ignorance of civil rights. We must step into the reality of natural rights because all the natural world has a right to existence. We, as humans, are only a small part of that existence. There can be no trade-off. We are the people. We have the potential for power. We must not fool ourselves. We must not mislead ourselves. It takes more than good intentions. It takes commitment. It means that at some point in our lives, we are going to have to decide that we have a way of life that we follow, and we are going to live that way of life, even when our enemies totally surround us, even when our enemies act against us with brutality and harshness, with lies and bribes. We're going to have to stand up to brutality and harshness, lies and bribes. We're going to have to stand with our way of life. That is the only solution that is here for us. We cannot reach a point in our lives where we are going to sit back and say, well, we'll make this compromise with the other side. They have every intention that they are going to use nuclearization of the world to colonize you all. There's a new Indian this time. The new Indian is white. They don't need you anymore because they've got an entire potential world market with millions and millions of consumers. So all the lies they've dangled in front of your faces, well, they're going to start pulling back on these lies a bit, and they're going to start slapping you all with a bit of reality. The reality that there are not political freedoms in America, the reality that there are not religious freedoms in America. You're all going to have to deal with reality and stop making excuses for America. We Indians are going to have to act as runners and messengers. We're going to have to run and act as teachers. We're going to have to talk to all the people who listen to us about what we believe, what it is that we know to be right. We are going to have to find ways to become communication of ourselves. They are afraid of us. We all must always remember that every time they have to create a system built upon traitors coming in and betraying you, anytime they have to build that system, it is because they understand they have a weakness. And if we persist in our struggle and become dedicated in our resistance, we will take them down through that weakness. It doesn't matter how many jail cells they build. It doesn't matter how many racist judges, sexist judges, ageist judges, and class judges they have. It doesn't matter how many of their side they put into illusory positions of respectability. It doesn't matter what they throw at us because we make the difference. We make the decision. We are the power. They deal in illusions, and that's all it is. We must not be afraid. We must never allow fear to be part of our life. We must always deal with reality. They have been able to use the elements of fear to control the masses of people through murder and making the rest of the people afraid of being murdered. But what good is it to live on this sacred place, this sacred earth? What good is it to be here if we can't live with dignity and respect? We are here just for our own purposes any more than we are here for them. We have to understand the implications of slavery and that America is a slave state. One way to understand this is that if you all grew up and left your homes to seek your independence and immediately went into debt, and there went your independence. Slavery is slavery. Whether you are an indentured servant or in debt, whether you are in chains, slavery is slavery. We have to evaluate our values. We have to start stepping away from the concepts they forced us to learn. We must share knowledge. We must not be drawn into their traps. Whatever we do, we must do as a resistance. Whatever we do as a people, whatever we do in the name of the people and the earth, we must do this with humility and with gratefulness for what we are and what we have. But we should not do it with pride. Because John Wayne is proud, the Marines are proud. People flying B-52 bombers are proud. How are we going to get our liberation if we take on their characteristics? It is time for us to think. We hate to think about the terminology we use, but we must think about the thoughts that go with our terminology. We must make our resistance totally complete. There must be no last way, halfway measures. We have to learn to put up and deal with the hard times, just like we enjoy good times. We have to learn and understand that hard times are necessary for the good times to be here. We have to learn and understand that all the struggle we will go through in our lives does not mean we are losing. We have to understand that they want us to be lazy in our minds and lazy in our spirits and lazy in our thinking. But the nature of people of the earth has always been one of struggle. It has always been. As the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, we learn to struggle and live because of the struggle of our living. We learned to live with harmony and respect for Mother Nature. We never forgot who we were. We always had a struggle, so let's not fool ourselves and try to make ourselves quit what we believe just because it's going to be hard. Let's struggle for a purpose. Let's struggle for the freeing of the earth, because only by freeing the earth and those who would attack the earth can we be free ourselves. It is the only way we can do it. There have been many social revolutions in America. There have been many social organizations. There have been women's rights movements. There have been equal rights movements. There have been union movements. And look who's still controlling our lives. We have to deal with that reality. The people have risen before. The people have spoken before. The people have tried before. But somewhere they did not put it all together. The reason being that they always attempted to change social conditions of the Americas without addressing the issue of our relationship to the land. Yet they cannot create a repressive military regime without the land. They cannot exploit economics without the land. We must not take them on just on the fact that we're going to own the land. Our concern must be for the land as well as ourselves. If we not use our minds to think of our coming generations, then they will win with their psychological genocide against us. We must not become discouraged. We must never quit. If they stop us one way, then we must find another way. They are afraid of our consistency. They always throw issues at us to keep us jumping from one issue to another. They throw lies and illusions in front of us. We must learn from the Vietnam War. The white American people said they're against war. That's what the people said. Then they went and listened to their lying politicians, and their lying politicians said, okay, we will help you. We will declare peace. And so the lying politicians got the people to settle for the withdrawal from Vietnam as being peace. And meanwhile, my people were going through a war right here on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And all that went unnoticed in the celebrations over peace being declared. The lie was sunk in. The American people accepted the lie. When the Black people were struggling for what became civil rights, really they were talking about equality. The politicians stepped in and said, "Yeah, we will help you all." And the Black people settled for civil rights, which is only part of life. Now the politicians come talking again. "We are going to help you with nuclear power." We've got to think about our past experience. If we're going to consciously become power and use our power correctly, we're going to have to find a way to communicate our thoughts and our resistance and our consciousness, which will not accept the nuclearization of the earth, that this goes against everything we know and believe in, that this time we draw the line. We have to take initiative. We can no longer afford to become and remain reactionary. We should work within our movements, but we must always remember that these are parts of a total resistance. The resistance is one thing at this point in our generation which can give life to coming generations. When we talk about the other side and energy, we can only place so much responsibility on the shoulders of the enemy. And we do have an enemy. We can call him Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan, or we can call it the Trilateral Commission. We can call them anything we want, but we've got to come to the reality that they are the enemy because our friends and the people who love us would not do this to us. So they are the enemy. We have to deal with this reality, the enemy. There must be a consciousness that goes into our minds when we start to act accordingly. We must know what responsibilities we must place upon the enemy and what responsibilities we take upon ourselves. Because when we talk about the energy crisis, we must remember that we are also energy. We are energy, so we must, if we are going to go with the truth and spiritual connection behind us, when we stand against our enemy and we accuse the enemy of misusing energy and we accuse him of abusing it, then we better think real hard about how we misuse our own energy, because we are energy. We have to deal with that. We are energy, and it's how we use ourselves that allows the enemy to misuse us. This resistance and this struggle for survival must be total, absolute, and complete. There are no half measures. They have interfered in our lives since the moment we were born. Look at America. You have to pay to be born, and you have to pay to be buried. That tells you a lot about our freedom. And they've gotten it into our consciousness to accept that, then we've got a lot of work to do. We really do. But we have the ability to change it because we are a natural part of the earth, because we are here. The earth did not put useless things here. We are a natural part of creation. They have been attacking indigenous people, and they have been misusing white people, and they want to push us all into a position where all we think about is ourselves. They want us to forget the earth, just like they used early Christianity to make Christians forget the earth. They want to do it all to all of us again in this generation. They want to isolate us. And they call us names like communist and anarchist and terrorist and criminal. They want to attack us. They want to use terrorism to intimidate us. They build a resistance in our hearts that says we will not accept it. We will never accept it. As to the indigenous peoples, I don't know how you all relate, but indigenous people understanding power, we are the spirit. We are the natural part of the earth, and all of the ancestors and all of our relations who have gone to the spirit world, they are here with us. They have power. They will help us. They will help us to see if we are willing to look. We are not separated from them because there is no place to go. This is our place, the earth. This is our mother. We will not go away from our mother. No matter what they do to us, no matter how they strike at us, every time they do it, we must continue. But we must never become reactionary. The one thing that has always bothered me about revolution is that every time I have met the revolutionaries, they have acted simply out of hatred for the oppressor. What we must do is act out of love for our people. No matter what they ever do to us, what we must always act out of is love for the people and love for the earth. We must never react out of hatred for those who have no sense. There's an anonymous quote at the end. It says, "A slave is not he who works without wages. It is he who tries to stop working and discovers he is not allowed." So I wanted to remind you that John Trudell is Dakota and Mexican. So he represents a large swath of this hemisphere. On the left is a bit of dialogue from Star Trek's Deep Space Nine that is very close to the time frame we're in now. So it's a fictional account of how the world falls apart in the 21st century. And because of increasing gaps between the rich and poor, people are put into um, ghettos that are secured by the military and they're not allowed to leave. And the people who are still free are taking office positions where they have to check everybody in and they feel bad about it, but it's the only way they can make money is by checking people into these concentration camps and making sure they stay there. Otherwise, they will end up in a concentration camp. So, uh, two of the characters having dialogue. Number one says, I just do my job. I try not to let it get to me. The second one says, it's not your fault that the world is the way it is. Then she says, that's what everyone tells themselves, and nothing ever gets better. So do something after you hear this presentation. Even the little things count. And then the quote on the right is from Edmund Burke in 1770, Thoughts on the Cause of the Present Discontents. When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fail. One by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. And we remember all of those Native people that died through war and disease and assimilation. Wokiksuye, 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 Wokiksuye. We are still here. And as Mr. Trudell said, we must resist. We must resist because we are the children of the sun and we love indigenously. And I'll finish with these two quotes from John Trudell. I am just a human being trying to make it in a world that is rapidly losing its understanding of being human. And I want to end on a positive note for those who feel me, who understand the depth of this presentation. It's a good day to be Indigenous. Thank you. Thank you.